My name is Garima Raidadan. I am co-moderating today's event with Priyanka and Shubham. Today here we have a versatile personality. Her kahani starts with almost single, but today she is more and no more Anjana Anjani. Please welcome our guest, an author, an award-winning screenwriter, food columnist, commentator, and a regular face on television news debate, Miss Advaita Kala. Before we begin, I request everyone to put off their cameras off and mics off to avoid any kind of disturbances. Those who wish to ask any kind of questions can feel free to write them in the chat box. The same will be taken up after the completion of her session. Please don't forget yourselves to mute and put your cameras off. We will have to remove yourselves in case of any disturbances. We are glad that Anvaita ma'am is on board with us. So without further ado, let's dive into the session and gather from her the secrets of creative writing. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, your voice isn't audible. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Muted. I'm muted. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I just want to say thanks to Think India for inviting me and to be part of this very vibrant forum. I enjoy Think India a lot. I think there is a lot to learn on this platform and to share. So I always look forward to my interactions with Think India, and I'm really pleased to be here. Today, we're actually going to do a little snapshot of creative writing. Creative writing and a workshop in creative writing is, of course, a much longer process. Garima, should I speak in English or Hindi, or do you want a mix?
Ma'am, whatever
Ma'am,
is suitable.
No, I'm comfortable with both, but what would your audience prefer?
Ma'am, English.
English.
English. Okay, fine. Okay, great. So, so I'm really looking forward. Okay, English only. Okay, fine. English only it'll be. I'm really happy and looking forward to interacting with you all. I can see your questions and your chat. So, feel free to put them in. And if I can, address them while we're speaking, that would be wonderful. There is a link also up to join for the Facebook session. I think some people are having trouble with the audio here. So please join the Facebook session so that you'll have to hear me to get the most out of this session, very importantly. Like I mentioned, creative writing is, of course, a long process in terms of a learning, but it is something that everybody is capable of doing. And we're going to be talking about, we'll start with why creative writing is so useful. Then we shall move on to, how do you start a project? It could be a screenplay, it could be a story. Where do the ideas come from? Subsequently, we will realize that ideas can come from anywhere. It can come from your personal interactions. It can come from somewhere you see, something you see or hear. So we'll get into that at that point of time. Then where do we look for these ideas? Where can we get these ideas for stories from? So we'll talk about them. And we'll talk about how we make sense of these ideas and weave them into a certain narrative. And finally, we'll talk about, how we kind of populate our stories. What is it that we use, right from the senses, which is smell, touch, hear, see, how we can populate their ideas. No, there isn't a workshop for this. It's too short to have a workshop, Kushi. But I think certificates and all don't really make that much of a difference. For example, I have never been to any creative writing workshop. I have never studied creative writing. And if you can see, I have some of my awards. You can see them in the frame behind me, which is the Screen Award, the Times of India Award, which was the International Film Fair Award at that point of time. So I don't feel you need any certification, any college degree, anything to be a writer. And I strongly believe that. In fact, I feel it's become a whole business, especially in countries like America, for example. You have something called an MFA. The MFA is supposed to teach you how to write. It's a master's in fine arts, and it costs as much as an MBA degree would. And frankly, I don't know how many writers the MFA produces. Certainly, it gives employment to a lot of writers, but because a lot of them join MFAs as faculty, but I'm not sure it really gives you any, creative writing skill beyond just teaching you how to structure things. So don't worry about certifications and degrees. This is one thing in which you don't need a certification or a degree. And of course, we'll talk about adjectives, we'll talk about building the story and finishing the story, which is very important, and really how you should communicate your story. So let's start right in the beginning, which is why is creative writing important? Now, everybody talks about the poor writer, that's almost a stereotype that if you take to writing, you will have to be you will have to face poverty. And that is actually quite true also in many ways, because it is a very fickle profession. There's so many great writers, for example, who never sold or never were appreciated in their lifetime. But after they died, some critic found their book or a film and said, wow, I mean, this is unbelievable. Why didn't people like this 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago? And suddenly that person becomes famous. It's happened with painters as well. You must have heard about Leonardo da Vinci, who died a very poor man. And now, I mean, very, very few people in the world can afford his paintings. So, this is sort of the tragedy of the creative arts in many ways. Even if you are very good, you may not get your due. So, this is a profession that can be frustrating, that can not be financially rewarding to the extent that you need it to be. When I wrote my first book, Almost Single, which was a little over 10 years ago, I still had a full time job and I was writing on the weekends. And whenever young writers approach me and they say, oh, we want to stop doing everything else, we want to move to the hills, or we want to move by the beach and stare out at the mountains or stare out at the beach and, kind of imagine stories there and become a writer. I said, that's so romantic. Even I want to do that after nearly 10 years of writing full time, but it's not possible. It takes time to build a body of work, to find financial, luck with it, and then to be able to live the life that, we all want to live, really, not just us, but even investment bankers. My brother-in-law is an investment banker, and he's always planning for his retirement. He works in New York. It's very hard, stressful. So he's thinking like 45, I want to stop. So, it's all our dreams, but let's be practical. Okay. It's very important that you have a backup plan, what we call a plan B, if you want to get into writing. That is very, very important to have. Most writers start out with that way. Be it Chetan Bhagat or be it Amish, everybody, Chetan was working in Hong Kong for the longest time, after 5 Point Someone. And it was only after, I think, his second or third book that he quit and became a full-time writer. So, there is that limitation. The other important thing is that, you can be a writer and you can work on different platforms. So today is a very good time to be a writer, because you have films you can write for, you can write for television. We have multiple entertainment channels. You can write for OTPs like Netflix, Amazon, Hotstar, Sony Live, Z5. Remember, 5 years ago, these didn't even exist. So you didn't have these options. And of course, you can write for films. So as of now, for example, I'm working on a Netflix show and I'm working on a film. 5 years ago, I would have only been working on a film or on a TV show. I wouldn't have had those many opportunities. So that is very, very important. Momina, it's a great question. What role does imagination play in creative writing? It plays a huge role, obviously, because you're telling stories, you're making things up. Also needs a trigger. it needs something that could take you to the next, take you to the next page, so to speak. And we'll talk about what kind of triggers you can have. Dimpy, I think, wanted some thoughts on blog writing and whether I write columns. Yes, I do write columns. I've written columns for all the major newspapers and sites. I write a regular column for yahoo.com, and columns is definitely a great way to practice your writing and to keep you writing, because there is a periodicity to it. So if, for example, my Yahoo column, I have to submit every 2 weeks. So that means I have to get something out there every 2 weeks. And if I'm not feeling like writing, then what do I do? Shreya wants to know about food blogging and food criticism. Yes, I had a column for the Indian Express and the Financial Express for about 6 years. I'm a hotelier by profession, and the food column was great fun because you got to write about food, and who doesn't love food? And it did also very well. And unfortunately, what's happened now is because of all this kind of food reviews on places like Zomato and things like that, the food column has kind of lost its value in that sense. But because of Instagram, there's a different kind of column. There's a different kind of representation of food, which is through photographs and videos and all of those kind of things. So definitely there's an option for that as well. Wow, so many questions coming in. This is great. Okay. I don't know. I'm just going to be answering questions. Someone wanted to know about self-publishing. Let me tell you about Amish. Amish, for example, when his first book, Mehula, came out, Maluha, sorry, he couldn't find a publisher. And I knew his agent at the time. And it was a gentleman by the name of Anuj Bahari, who runs a very famous bookshop in Khan Market in New Delhi called Bahari Sons. Very famous, very well known. And he was representing him. And I remember I was in Delhi at that time working on Anjana Anjani, my first film. And Anuj sent me Amish's self-published copy of his book and said, can you take a look at this? And my book had just come out a year before that. And he said, take a look at this. It's a great book, but he hasn't been able to find a publisher. So Amish actually self-published. After he self-published, publisher suddenly woke up, and this was a good time. It was time meeting opportunity because books were starting to sell online, right? So Flipkart, Amazon, all these people were kind of coming in, and this book just took off, and it became a massive seller. And once it became a massive seller, then of course all the publishers were like, oh my God, we must publish this. And he did go ahead and publish this. And it was important to get onto a mainstream publisher those many years ago. But subsequently what happened was that how do I put this? Subsequently, when people started buying more books online and social media took off, you didn't really need a mainstream publisher, because the greatest advantage with a mainstream publisher was editing, book cover design, marketing, and distribution. The critical point was distribution. The fact that they were in touch with booksellers and they could take your book and send it to different parts of the country. So you would find it in a Trivandrum and you would find it in a Missouri. And that was really their strength. What has happened with online now, with online bookstores and so many people buying their books online and through Amazon, because you get such great discounts as well, is that today you can publish your own book. You don't even have to spend on actual paper and publishing a book. You can even just do an ebook and sell it on Kindle. And so that takes care of your distribution. It can reach not only people in the country, but around the world. So that's a big thing. You can hire an editor to edit your book, because I think it's very important to get a second opinion on your writing. You can then do your marketing through social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can really build a lot of awareness about your book. So in a lot of ways today, self-publishing is really a great opportunity for people. So I think you should really, thank you, Manish. I'm glad you're enjoying the webinar. And so I think you must go forward with self-publishing. Ikra just asked me about, someone wants to say that can we take the questions on the latter part of the, of the talk, because they're getting confused. And, some people want to talk about article writing and column writing and food writing. So that's something maybe, Garima, we can do a session on that at another time,
Yes,
because
ma'am. Surely, ma'am.
so let's now stick to writing in terms of creative writing. And let me do these, let me quickly give you a run through, and then you all can come in with your questions, and Garima can look at your questions and ask me. Okay, Garima? Well,
Yeah,
let's.
yeah, ma'am.
Okay, and that includes poetry writing as well and everything. So let's start. Now, Pavan's asked a great question to start with, how to start initially. Everything comes with an idea. Now, I'm going to assume most of you have seen Kahani, my film with Vidya Balan, and it was based in Calcutta. Sorry, I have something stuck in my throat. But what happened was 26/11 happened at that point of time. And once 26/11 happened, I was a hotelier, so I knew a lot of people actually, caught up in the attack. Thank you, Shreya. I'm glad you liked the film. And they were caught up in the attack, and it was a very traumatic time. Maybe a lot of you were very young at that point. But for 3 days, we were watching this live TV spectacle of an attack. And because I was feeling personally so involved, one of my closest friends was working there, another student of mine died in the attack, that I felt a lot of residual grief and anger after the attack. And I kept looking for ways to kind of find an outlet. And it's rightly said that writing is very cathartic. It helps you kind of get out of certain spaces, usually dark spaces. The film is Kahani. Shashikala cannot hear me, so you may need to go onto the Facebook page. But what it did was, writing can help you get out of some very dark spaces, and that's very important. And for me, Kahani was kind of germinated because of that experience. So when you speak of ideas, because I was so emotionally caught in the events of 26/11, and the sense of helplessness that those of us who were watching from a distance were feeling, that's when, I started thinking that, yes, what if, because a lot of people were feeling angry, and they were saying, God, I wish I could go in there and I could kick some ass and kind of take the revenge that I need to take, and sort things out for my country. So Vidya Balan's character and Kahani really came out of this sense of vendetta, this desire, this yearning for vendetta, and then we made it personal. It was her husband who had died in a terror attack, so she really wanted revenge for that. So that's one example of where a story idea can come from. In other cases, I remember once I read this article about the Taliban and about how they had, fooled the Americans. One man had fooled the Americans by telling them that, oh, I am a very senior Taliban leader and I can negotiate peace for you. So, I need to kind of be taken seriously. And the Americans did take him seriously, and they gave him lots of money. They flew him to Washington. He met with people, and he came back. And when he came back and disappeared, they suddenly realized that he was a con artist. He didn't know anybody. He had just dressed up like that and, ingratiated himself and got into the network and tricked them. And it was such a great story. But the thing was that because it made the Americans look so foolish, they immediately killed it. Like they didn't, like, I think it came out in like one or two places in the media. And then the Americans were like, no, 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 like, shut this down, right? So the story vanished. And it was very hard that Syed Haider is saying pity CIA. Yes, that's true. And so then they just finished the story, and I tried to research for it, and I couldn't find anything on this because obviously they had like wiped it, right? and and then I said, okay, so all I have, and someone was asking, how do you balance facts and imagination? So in a situation like this, when you have very few facts, so you have to use a lot of imagination. So you kind of take that incident, and then you kind of put it in that same zone, and you say, okay, so this happened, we know this character exists, and now let's create the whole story around it. So sometimes you can pick something up from the news item, and you don't really know the people involved, but it just triggers your curiosity. So that's something you can do. Something personal, like I said, 2611 can happen. Anjana Anjani, the whole thing with suicide. Okay, my voice is breaking, so I'm going to switch my video. Is that okay? So that you all can hear me. Can you all hear me now?
Ma'am, your voice
Ma'am,
is
your voice.
perfectly okay, and video is also okay, ma'am. Ma'am, there is
Oh,
no
it's
echo,
okay.
and
Yes,
the
ma'am.
problem is
Yes.
with their part.
Okay, someone said that my voice was breaking. That's why.
No, ma'am, it is on their end.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll switch things on. Okay, great. So yeah, so this was so ideas, really, my point is, can come from anywhere. Everybody has a story to tell. I believe this very strongly. I meet a lot of people, and a lot of people come to me and they say, oh, I want to tell this story, oh, I want to tell that story, oh, I want to write this. The thing is that, the difference between someone who's actually a writer and someone is who has a story to tell is only in the writing. Most people with a story to tell that I've met is like, oh, I have a story to tell, and then the next line will be, but I don't have the time, but I have to do this, but maybe one day I will, and that one day never comes. The only difference between a writer and someone who has a story to tell is the fact that writers actually go down and tell that story. They actually, although they procrastinate a lot as well, but they actually put pen to paper, or now finger to keypad, as the case is, and tell the story that they need to tell. So I think that's extremely important. Like, it could be a friend's wedding, it could be an altercation, it could be anything that makes you think. And I always say this, at least in my case, a lot of the story writes itself out in my head before it even comes out in any form. So I'm always like, I'm going through different activities. I have maybe a TV appearance, maybe a column, maybe a family, something to do. But story I is going on in my head. I'm thinking, I'm snatching minutes away from the day without even trying to. I'm thinking, what if that character did this? Like right now, I'm writing, there's a murder. So I'm always thinking, like, I'm at that point where I don't know who the murder is, and I don't know why the person murdered. I just know who the victim is. Okay, you get it? So I know who the victim is, but I don't know why that person has been murdered, and I don't know who that person is murdered by. So now I'm stuck there in a way. So I'm now just thinking all the time, yeah, what if this person did it? Or why would this person do it? So, I'm working it out in my mind all the time. So that's part of the creative process. You will wrestle with certain things. You will not know what the immediate solution or the best solution is. But once you keep thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, you will find the answer. So ideas are really things that come out of the blue. Sometimes, you just might be sitting and looking out, not even out at the ocean or snow-capped mountains. You may just be looking out of the window at the traffic, and something quickly will come to your mind, and you'll be like, wow, I never thought of that. So it just really really depends. It's that kind of a situation. So I would keep myself very open. I would write things down very often. Advaita says this happens all the time with her, which is great. Sometimes, so you will just need to make notes of things. It's very important as somebody who wants to do creative writing. Uh, you know, you need to write down ideas. You need to write. Sometimes you'll notice or you'll meet somebody who really fascinates you. It may not be romantic, it could be romantic, but it does not necessarily have to be romantic. They may have a very different or a cute style of talking. They may have a certain walk. They may speak in a certain way. They may look a certain way. They may have an interesting tattoo. You don't know. They may live in a crazy house. We all have these like experiences where we meet people and we're like, wow, I never thought I would meet someone like this. So, make notes. Very important, because you'll forget. We're doing so many things in life, you'll forget. So that you remember who this person is, what you found intriguing, and write it down. So, notes and taking notes, keeping a journal, putting your points together is very, very important. It's a very important functioning of preparing to write. Very important. So make sure that you do that at all times. The other very important thing is characters. Like, even when we are interested, now think about it. Okay, all our mothers like to tell us stories about our relatives. इसने ये किया, फिर उसने वो कहा, फिर ये हो गया. And sometimes you'll find your mind wandering away and you'll be like, oh God, like not this person again, right? So you don't want a character like that. You don't want to write a character like that, wherein you're just saying, oh God, I don't want to hear this story, right? So you have to make sure that the character you create is someone who people are interested in. That's very important, because if you're not interested in the character, you don't care about their story. You don't want to hear their story. You don't want to know what's happening in their life. We all have limited time to do things, to entertain ourselves, whatever it may be. So character is very important. And this is where your journaling will help, because when you're making notes about interesting people you meet, or things you notice about people, or incidents that have happened to people, you'll be able to, kind of go back to it. And Angel is asking, how do you execute the idea? And part of the execution, Angel, actually lies in the character that you're developing and the story idea that you've thought of. I always say, stories determine how they want to be told or how they should be told. So when these ideas come to you, you may love reading thrillers, for example, but what the idea that's inspiring you to write is a love story, is a beautiful love story between two people. So that's what you will write. You will then write a love story. You won't write the thriller. So it just depends on what you're excited. I love to write about murders. I've never experienced one, thank God, and I hope I never do. But it's just your interest level. So that's part of it. What really draws you, what sucks you into a story, that is what is going to take you far. Then comes, of course, the next process of character development. Name your characters, talk to people. That takes research also. So, for example, if for my film Anjana Anjani, Ranbir Kapoor was going to, talk about, was going to be this guy who was, who went down in the financial crisis of 2008. So I had to research about it. I had to research about what happened in 2008. Why did people lose their money? Why did they lose their money? A, B, what did they do to get that going in that point of time? What kind of psychological effect did it have? So, you read things, you talk to people who have gone through that experience, you talk to people who are in that high stakes stockbrokering world and the kind of lifestyle they lead and the kind of pressures they face. So all of those things really kind of, help you build your character. So think about it this way. You're a journalist, you've met somebody, you need to interview them. Say it's a doctor and you're writing about a virus, corona, right? So you mean it, what kind of doctor is experienced in this? You say, oh, the doctor that I should first speak to is an epidemiologist, right? Because those are the doctors or the medical professionals who deal with infectious disease. So you start there and you start asking them questions. So in a lot of ways, you have to be a journalist to build your characters. You have to ask the right questions, research. Then and a lot of times your questions will also give you plot points. You will also know what is going to happen in the story, and they will give you plot points. So that is also very, very important when you get down to actually writing your story. Now, most stories are in a three-act format. Three-act formats. Plot points meet are really things that take your story forward. So for example, a plot point will be that in the beginning of my story, the character is a is a vivacious, lovely girl who likes to go out, likes to party, and she gets back behind the wheel of a car, and she's driving too fast and she gets into an accident. Boom, that's your plot point. Wow, you didn't see that coming. She's full of life, but she has this terrible accident. Then plot point two can be she either dies, or that's the end of your story, right? So she can't die. So maybe she gets into a coma. Then if she gets into a coma, means that she's lying in a bed and she's really doing nothing. So then you need other characters. Her mother, maybe there's a boyfriend, maybe there's a teacher who really inspires her. So what role do these people play? Okay, maybe she doesn't get into a coma, maybe she gets disabled. So then your plot point is different. There's a doctor, there's a physiotherapist, there are friends who are telling her you can walk, try and walk. So then these become your plot points. So it's just, it's like opening doors, right? Which door do you want to open? And the door you open will take you on that journey. It'll take you into that journey. So that's what a plot point really is. And once you get to this point, three-act structure is what I was talking about, which is the beginning, middle, and the end. The beginning of a story is really when you introduce the characters, when you introduce the world. Someone asked about fantasy novels. Now, fantasy is something that is out of our imagination, right? Like, for example, if I talk to you about a subway or about a metro, we all may call it different things, but we know what a subway is, what a metro is. We've all traveled. So it may be called the underground in New York, and it may be called, I think, the subway in New York and the US may be called the metro or the underground in England, and over here we call it the metro. But we all know what it is. We've all been on it. So I don't need to explain too much to you. But if you're writing a fantasy and you're saying there is an intergalactic world, and in that intergalactic world, people travel by this vehicle known as, I don't know, Wally Coddle something, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to think you're crazy. So you will have to then, for me to believe this world, want to be in this world and listen to this idea, then please talk about it, describe it. So, so your beginning is really establishing your world. Is it a city? Is it an apartment complex? Is it a village? Is it a different country? Is it an island? Is it a mountain top? So where is your location of your story? Where is it happening? Is it happening in a school? Is it happening in a college? Is it happening in parliament? Where is it happening? So that is the first thing that you establish. Then you establish your characters. Every story, has a main character. Who is your main character? What is the name? What do they do? Where do they live? What is their nature? Is the person angry? Is the person patient? Is the person impatient? Is the person evil? Remember, your main character doesn't need to be a nice person. It can be a serial killer, right? It can be a very happy-go-lucky, free-spirited person. It can be anything. But you have to tell the reader exactly who your character is. So that's the next part. That's your introduction. That's what it covers. And then you go to the middle. which is the body of your story. The body of your story is where the plot points come in, where the twists come in, where what actually happens takes place. And that is a critical part of your story because that will keep your reader or your viewer, if it's a film, watching or reading. If they get bored during this second part, then they'll toss the book aside and they'll tell their friends, oh, don't ever read it or don't watch that film, it's awful. Or they'll keep going and they'll want to know what happens next. And that's where plot points are important. That's where you keep the reader engaged in the story. So it's a critical part of the storytelling process. The final part is, of course, the end, the climax. Some of you have wanted to know about the climax. Others have asked, do we already know how something is going to end? Yes or no? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. In Kahani, I knew that Vidya was not pregnant. I just had to write the story in such a way wherein you also believed. Thank you, Gaurav. You're saying the best climax was Kahani. I appreciate that. I just wanted to, kind of make you all believe that she is pregnant. So I knew, because I knew she wasn't pregnant, that my biggest challenge was that when you watch the film, you believe that she's pregnant. So I wrote that film like she was pregnant. So that in the end, you also said, she was pregnant. You mean she wasn't? And that's the reaction I wanted to get from you. So the climax is really important. And the climax really drives your story. It also leaves behind a memory with the viewer, a memory that makes them remember the film, that makes them talk about the film or the book and recommend it to other people. Because at the end of it, a viewer, a reader, they are spending money, they are spending time to be to read your book, to watch your film. So you have to respect that. When they leave that theater or they put that book down, they have to feel, oh, that was fantastic. Now, you can't make everybody happy also, right? So remember that. You cannot make everybody happy. But yes, you have to ensure that the ending that you give a story is something that the reader can take back with them, that they can say, wow, I mean, that was worth it. So that is really, the 3-act structure that I want to talk about. Remember, keep journaling, keep writing, keep making points, keep watching. If you want to write screenplays, the best way to learn is to keep watching movies. If you want to write books, keep reading. You will find that the best screenplay writers, the best authors are great readers. They love to read. And the great thing about reading is, language acquisition. The more you read, the more words you'll pick up. Your vocabulary will grow. Your imagination will expand. So those are some very important things that you need to do. Komal wants to know about poetry. Yes, Komal, poetry is a very difficult genre for a couple of reasons. First of all, it takes a lot out of you because it's really emotional and usually it comes from a very deep place. Secondly, publishers are, wary about, publishing poetry because they feel it doesn't sell. So that's also tough to find a publisher for poetry. And having said that, it's not something that you shouldn't do, but I think you should do it, but you should be realistic about how it goes about. And really, yes, Smriti, that's a great question. I was just going to say that if you write poetry, you should also consider writing lyrics because that definitely has a huge market. And poetry and lyrics, in my mind, are really very similar. Munaza wants to ask, how do you find authenticity in your writing? You find authenticity in your writing by really focusing on why you're writing this. You have to feel it deeply. Like I told you with Kahani, I felt that experience of 2611 very deeply. It moved me on many levels. So that's where authenticity comes from. It comes from experiencing, feeling something. the great writers are empaths. And when I say empaths, is that they have the ability to put themselves in other people's shoes and experience life and things in a way that really, really transforms them. And when they write something, it transforms the reader or the viewer as well. You know, with 2611, for example, because I had worked in hotels, because I knew so many people who were trapped, I almost felt like, oh my God, what if I was in those rooms? And I knew those hotels very well because I'd been there many times. I'd been in the back areas, I'd been in the guest areas. So, you know, that made me feel like, oh my God, what if I had been in the lobby? Or what if I had been? So, you know, you feel that anxiety, you feel that nervousness. So that is very, very helpful. So that's one big tip that I want to give you. And now I'm going to hand over to Garima because we are at 3:44. So we can do about questions for the next 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for the session. Priyanka will be taking all the questions. You can answer them one by one. Over to you, Priyanka.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes,
Hello.
Priyanka, you're audible. Yes,
Yes, you're
Priyanka.
audible. Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. In
Ma'am, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah,
No,
I can't hear Priyanka too well. Her voice is breaking.
Ma'am, can I?
no, 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 sir,
Yeah,
no, sir.
yeah. Who
You
wants to
cannot
ask a
ask.
question? Please tell me your name and ask the question.
Yeah, my name is Simranjeet Singh.
Okay.
Ma'am, my question to is how to keep write how how to keep writing in a consistent manner on regular basis.
You know, Simranjeet, it's like any habit. Fix a time, fix a place, and sit down and just do it. There will be many days when you don't feel like writing, when you don't have any ideas, but you must still pursue it. You must still discipline your mind and your body to not pick up your cell phone, not turn on the TV, not get distracted, and sit in that place. And so, there are some days you'll write a paragraph, on other days you'll write five pages. You know, it just depends. So just give yourself that opportunity to only do writing, and you will find that something will come from it. For example, Shobha Day, who's a very well-known writer, she actually sits down. I asked her this question once because she's come out with so many books, and regularly, you know, she comes out with books every 1 or 2 years, and it's quite amazing. And she's now, I think, 70 plus, and she's been writing for decades. She told me that, you know, she really gets down in the morning, 7 a.m., and sits down and does her writing. Now, people may have different reasons for the time they pick. For example, I love to write late at night because it's more quiet and I feel like, you know, my day is behind me and I can focus on this. Other people, some people who are, for example, have children, they want to write in the morning. So they get up early, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and they put in their 2, 3 hours of writing before the rest of the family wakes up. And you may be working all day, 5 days a week or 6 days a week. So then you put your day off, you know, your Saturday and Sunday to do your writing. Does that mean you'll have to give up maybe on some of your hobbies and do this instead? Yeah, but that's the sacrifice you have to be willing to make.
Hi, could I ask a question, please? My name is
Sure,
Thank
Shravik.
you,
Shravik.
ma'am. Thank you very much.
Please, all the participants, write your questions
Shravik, you can ask.
Thank you so
in
much,
the
Advaita.
stop. Yeah.
I just have a very quick question. if I'm moving my characters from one city to another to different geographical locations, would you do a lot of research on how you are making them travel and stuff like that so it looks more realistic? Or is it going to be, I'm talking about fiction. So would you do a lot of research to move them from location to location?
Depends. Okay, if for example your story is set in the Mughal era, or at a time when you didn't have all these modes of transport, you didn't have the railways, you didn't have the planes, you didn't have motors, so you would then want to spend some time there because that journey could be interesting for the reader, because we don't travel like that anymore. So you would say, okay, he got on a bullock cart, or he took a horse, and this horse was, going to transport him, and it took him so many days to travel from Delhi to Sardana or Meerut. And now we can do it in 2.5 hours, but back then it would have taken days, and then he'd have to set up.
No,
Yeah.
if it is kind of now, let's say I'm getting somebody from Kolkata to Delhi in a car. So how much time do I need to spend on research on the route that they are taking, or can I
Yeah, you would have to.
pick it up?
You would have to, definitely, because you would then put them on the Grand Trunk route. There's a historicity to it, so you would write about the Grand Trunk Road. You would talk, is something happening to them on the road? Is there a problem? Do they get lost? Do they get carjacked? Or is it just like, if it's going to be just like a plain drive, and nothing's going to happen on that drive, then you can say it took them 46 hours, or it took them 24 hours to drive down from Kolkata to Delhi, and then you just leave it at that. But if you think you're going to have plot points on that journey, something is going to happen. Are they going to fall in love? Are they going to get lost? Then you need to, of course, describe it more. So it just depends on what you're trying to tell.
Karthikeya.
Hi.
Karthikeya.
Hi. Thank you for taking my question. I want to ask that I'm in a process of writing a book. In fact, I have written my first book, and now I am rewriting it, just making the cosmetic changes before I approach the publisher. So I had this one particular question. Maybe this is my first time experience, so I'm struggling with it. That how to describe a particular moment that character is in, the environment around. You understand? Some writers are very good in explaining the situation, the people around, and the mood. So how to break that monotony from your character, you go into the moment, the environment around. So if you can throw some light on that.
It just depends. I don't think you need to force yourself to do it, right? So I remember when I some people told me, put some physical intimacy, put some sex in it, and it'll become more sellable, and it'll be juicier, and this and that and the other. And I was like, it takes skill to even write physical intimacy. It's not like, I can just get up and just say, oh, I want to write about it, and then
True.
to deliver that moving kind of experience. So, first figure out yourself as a writer. How interested are you in getting into those aspects? There are some writers very descriptive, and there are readers who enjoy description. And then there are some writers who don't really care about description, but really want to focus on plot. Like this happened, that happened, and keep the story moving. And there are readers who start reading about the aloo ka paratha with the smoke wafting in the air, and the mango pickle with that particular tangy taste, rusted green color, and the pool of oil. And they say, come on, it's just a paratha and, what do you call it? So they get irritated and they'll skip the whole paragraph. So you have to think of this for yourself. Do you enjoy writing it?
Yeah.
Can you do a good job with getting into those kind of descriptions? And most
I
importantly,
think it makes,
most importantly, remember, you don't have to do it. I think, a lot of times we read like about great writers, and then we go and we read the great writers, and we say, oh, damn, I wish I could describe the river like that.
I think you're at that point. Yeah. right?
Yeah, so you write, your first reader is yourself, and you're also your best
Absolutely.
critic. You know what you can do well, and you know what you can't do well. So stick to what you can do well. Not everybody has to be Arundhati Roy, or you can be Harry Potter. You can be J.K. Rowling. You can be Harlan Coben or Agatha Christie. You can be whoever. You don't have to be one kind of writer.
That answers
To
my question.
Karthikeyan.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Kartika,
Yeah,
go ahead.
ma'am, this is Debolina. I'm from Calcutta. So the
Okay.
way you have, shown
Can I
Calcutta,
ask a question?
the essence of the culture, it's beautiful. So, ma'am, I'm writing a thriller, and I want people to connect with the character. You said that, the description is important as the writer wants it to reach to the readers. But until I'm describing how the character is feeling or what made him this, like I can't help the audience to feel what the character is feeling, right? So like,
What is the question exactly?
so ma'am, should I spend more time in describing the situations that made him this, or I should like be very precise that what he feels and the situation around him? So like I'm like very
This
doubtful
is
about that.
Debolina, is it a book or a film?
Mama, it's a story. I'm writing a story for
But
a short film.
short story. Okay,
Yes.
so a short story by definition is short. Okay,
Yeah.
so that means you can't plunge into very long descriptions because you just don't have the bandwidth or the space to do that.
No, ma'am,
So
I'm writing it for a short film. So, like, I want the audience to engage with the character, right?
understood, but you can't get too descriptive because it is a short story. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? So you have a limitation in the number. If it's a novel, you can write pages and you can describe and you can have interior monologues and you can do all those things that you want to do. But if it's a short story, you have to know what the story that you're telling. So if your short story is about A meets B, A and B decide to go on this adventure together, but they have a misunderstanding, then A and B split, then that's right. So you know your story, that's my story and this is how I have to tell it, and that means that I may not have to jump, I may not have the opportunity to speak a lot about where they are going or what it's looking like, or what their relationship has evolved from 5 years ago. You won't have space.
Right.
So you will have to like keep it more concise. And in film, there's a great line. They say, "Show, don't tell." And I find that even helpful in writing novels because a lot of times, you can't really show, but sometimes, as a reader also, if a writer is kind of explaining everything to me, it can get annoying after a point. I just want them to tell the story, and I will make my own translation. I always say, translation rights are with the reader and the viewer, whether you like it or not. Some things, most things, you should just leave it to them.
Yes. Thank you, Debrina. Please, all the participants, don't unmute yourself. I'll be
Mahima's
taking up the
asking,
question.
could you read a screenplay that
Ask
you
a
found
question.
fascinating? It was The Unusual Suspects. I love that film. Fantastic.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, Sheetal, go ahead.
Ma'am, I want to do the issue who gets the creative writing course, or what can I do to start writing in a perfect way? I am just a beginner and I don't know anything about this.
Oh, you're a beginner. I think, Sheetal, I started with this. I personally don't believe that, you need to get into like those 2 year, 3 year courses. That's my own thought process. But you can go ahead and really interested, really, read more. A lot of times, you will gain writing skills from reading. The other thing you can do is read screenplays. There's a lot of material online as well, that creative writing courses for free online that you can get to, and that you can watch YouTube videos that give you a lot of tips. So today, I mean, we live in such a great time. There's so many tools available to us just at a click of a button. So before you invest money, and I would suggest that you try these things, see how that changes your writing, and please write, because the best practice is actually writing. So even if you join a creative writing course, they're going to make you write. So you have to inculcate that discipline and keep writing, and that will help you.
Ask a question, please.
Okay. So some people are complaining that we should ask the question through the chat.
Yes, ma'am. Please, everyone, mute yourself.
Will we get e-certificates?
No, I think please ask in the chat box, or otherwise, okay. Please, next question.
Yeah, ma'am, how to choose the genre for creative writing?
Yeah, I think I already answered that. It's what you're drawn to. I love to read thrillers, for example. So I like to write them too. So and sometimes that's a match. It's great, but the story you may want to tell is a love story. So the story will guide you. The story will tell you what to write and how to write it. So don't worry too much about how to pick a genre. You'll find that the genre will pick you.
And ma'am, next question, if there is a crime plot, how to deal with the legal aspects?
In what way, legal aspects? I need some.
If there is a crime plot and there is a murder or something is related, how do we
Research, pure research. You cops, for example, there's one real life murder mystery I'm very, very, very intrigued in, and I was lucky enough to connect with the actual officer who investigated it and solved it. So now I'm in touch with him, so a lot of my questions he's answering, because I say, okay, how did you find this out? How did you meet this person? How did you know you have to talk to this person? So then they would answer that. So that's really how it works.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'm also for those of you who are interested in interning and working on a project, please send in your email, email me, and we will be, happy to take a look. We have limited spots, but if you'd like to intern with me and get some guidance and work on a live project with research, help with a little bit of writing, I'll be glad to consider your entries. You can email me. I'll just put my email on the chat. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay, it's here. I have to remember my email also. Other email. Just give me a second. I'm just telling you all what it is. Yeah, got it. Okay. It's advaitaoffice@gmail.com. Okay, I put it on the chat as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Advaita Office, my name with office@gmail.com.
Yes, ma'am.
So these are unpaid internships. I should make that clear. But you'll get to learn about them. And if you do have potential and we keep you on and all, then we'll discuss that as well.
Yes.
Ma'am, your email ID once again, please.
Yeah, it's in the chat box. Please, everyone, write it down. ADVAITA office@gmail.com. I hope everyone has noted it down.
Because because I feel like a lot of times you learn, like I didn't know how to write a screenplay, but when I actually started, because my book was so popular and famous, I got an offer for a film. And the director of the film, Siddharth Anand, who's made Hello Namaste, Salam Namaste, and War, most recently War, he was a screenwriter and he helped me. He taught me how to write that film. You know, he taught me how to write screenplays. A lot of times you learn by doing. That's the best way to learn. Chai. Chai.
Ma'am, Shubham will be taking up the vote of thanks.
Okay. Okay. Sarah's asking if you can submit any work. No, please don't submit work. If you're interested in working in a writer's room and being guided in the process of writing, screenplays. This is for a screenplay project, or if you're interested in doing all research, writing, translating, all of that, then please connect with us because there is work that we have that we can help you, and you'll learn a lot during this process.
Afternoon, everyone. No, I would like to thank Think India for providing with such a great platform for creative writing workshop. I would like to thank Ma'am Advaita Kala ma'am for being here with us. Without you, it would have been impossible. We
Thank you.
can't thank you. We can't thank you enough for creative writing workshop. I'm confident that we all have learned something from your wonderful insights. The entire Think India team is deeply thankful to Advaita ma'am for taking the time from her busy schedule for this workshop. I would also like to thank our participants for their patience, presence, and their wonderful questions, thus helping us making this event successful. We look forward for having you again in our future events. I would also like to thank my co-moderators, Priyanka and Garima. As we all know, there is a pandemic situation. Every one of us is stuck at home. I hope everyone is all right and stay home, be safe. With these words, I would like to end this session. And thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much for having me, Think India. And I think Alicia said she's written something. Alicia, you can contact us on email, like people have said here. Tanisha wants to know about writing non-fiction. We could